Okay, everybody, today we are back for Chapter 9, Lesson 1, Scatter Plots. I'm going to do something a little bit different for this section here. We're going to look at the examples that you would find in ALEKS, okay? So if you're stuck on your homework, play back the video here. It should be pretty darn helpful for you. Okay, number 1, constructing a scatter plot. The table below shows the amount of shrimp and the amount of beef bought by each of 6 people. Create a scatter plot for the data. Okay, so super easy section here, you guys. You're not going to have any problems whatsoever. Let's recall that this column here is X, all the X's, the X-axis, and this data here is going to go on the Y-axis. Okay, so we are going to create a scatter plot. So let's do a straight line right there, and let's do a straight line going out that way. And the vertical line, you guys, is the y-axis, and the horizontal line is the x-axis. Now, the data that needs to go on the x-axis is the amount of shrimp in pounds. So we could say amount. Good luck writing amount of shrimp with this digital pen here. Amount of shrimp, why don't we do that? And ask yourself really quickly, what do you think is going to go on the y-axis? So if the amount of shrimp is on the x-axis, the amount of beef is going to go on the y-axis. So we would say amount of beef. Okay, I guess I have enough room to write amount up there. Let's try that. Amount of beef. Certain letters don't work, you guys, and one of them is definitely going to be the letter M. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our data here, the numbers. So on the amount of shrimp, we're going from 2 to 12. So what I could probably do is on the x-axis, I would do 1 through 12. Okay, I think I'm going to give that a try. Let me change the color here to make this a little bit more visible. So let's go ahead and say that the end of this is going to be a 12. Halfway across would be a 6. Right? This is obviously going to be a 0 down there on the end. This would be a 3. And I'm only doing it this way so I can get the scale somewhat accurate, the distance between each one. And then we'd have a 1 and a 2 here. And then we've got our 3. And we'd have a 4, a 5, and a 6. We'd have a 7 and an 8 and a 9 and a 10, 11, and 12. And then we're going to do the same thing on the y-axis, but you can see the y-axis is actually going to go all the way up to 13. So maybe what I'll do is I'll put the 12 up there, and then I'll just do one line for the 13 above it. So let's say this is going to be 12. About half of that would be 6. Half of that is going to be 3. Right up here between the 6 and the 12 is going to be a 9, and then I can kind of fill in the other numbers. So the spacing between the numbers is all fairly accurate. Okay, it just looks a little bit nicer that way. Okay, and then we're going to go all the way up to 13, so let's put one more up there. We're going to make that a 13. So this here, when we have 2 pounds of shrimp, we've got 1 pound of beef. So we will go over to the 2, which is going to be right here, and we're going to go up to the 1, and we're going to put a dot right there. And I think, let's see if that'll let me put in a dot. Okay, that's as good as we're going to get. Hopefully on yours you guys can make that a little bit darker. So the next one here, we're going to go over 5, and we are going to go up 8. So I'll go over to the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, and then I'm going to go up to the 8. So that's going to bring us right about here. So let's see if we can get that in there like that. So we've got 1 down here. Should be just 1 dot. And let's go ahead and do the 7 and the 13. So we'll go over 7 and we're going to go up 13. So that's going to give me a dot up here at the top. And again, that's just one dot on your paper. And then let's go ahead and do 8 and 10. So we'll go over 8. So we've got 6, 7, 8, and then we're going to follow that up to the 10. And that's going to be right about there. And let's see, then we're going to have to do the 11 and the 3. I'm still trying to get that one in good. So we've got 11 and 3, so we'll go over 11 and up 3, over 11 and up 3. That's going to bring us to right about there. And we're going to do one more. That's going to be over 12 and up 6. So we'll go all the way over to the 12 over here, and then we're going to go all the way up to the 6, and that's going to be right about there. Whoops. Let's see if we can get that to work. Okay, so that is, oh, you know what, you guys have an idea here. I wonder if I change the font of that, if that's going to work a little bit better. So let's see, that first one would be, whoa, that's perfect, almost. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in those. I like that. And then we're going to have one there, 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 there. I don't know if I missed any of you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then over here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're good. So that's it, you guys. We've created a scatter plot. Scatter plot's done. There's other things we can do with it, but if you get a problem like that, that's all they want you to do. They just want you to create a scatter plot. Okay, let's move on down to the next one. All right, problem number 2. So shown below are the scatter plots for 4 data sets. Answer the questions that follow. So we've got 4 figures here, you guys. I want you guys to look back to chapter 3. I'm pretty sure it's chapter 3. But we had, when we graphed, we had a line going in this direction, and that was going to be a positive slope. So we had a line like this. That was a negative slope. Hopefully you guys remember that if we had a horizontal line, we can make a Z out of that. And you may recall that that's exactly what we did in that section there. And with that horizontal line, we made a Z, and that was no slope. And then if we had a vertical line, I'm sorry, that was this one right here is 0 slope. And then if we had a vertical line, with a vertical line, we can make an N out of that. So we remembered that as being no slope. So in a way, we're kind of doing the same thing right here. So let's take a look at figure 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we'll talk about them a little bit, okay? So I'm going to go to number 4 first, you guys, because that's probably the easiest one. If we looked at the scatter plot, we can see that there's almost, if you were to sketch a line, and we'll talk about that later, a line of best fit, we could see that the slope of this line here would be positive. And I'm going to go ahead and change colors. And figure 3, the slope of this one would be negative. So figure 4, this has a positive relationship. And this one has a negative linear relationship. And figure 2, you'll notice that the dots are all over the place. So if the dots are going to be all over the place like that, you can say that there's no relationship whatsoever between the variables. All right, so no relationship. And then figure number 1, I can see that there's some sort of relationship, but it just doesn't create a straight line. So which of the data set appears to show a negative, or down here on A, which data set appears to show a negative linear relationship? So this is going to be figure 3 over here. That one kind of shows a negative linear relationship, right? All right, let's go ahead. I'm gonna change the size of this, see if that helps a little bit. Okay, letter B, which data set appears to show a positive linear relationship? So this one here was 3. And which one has a positive? If this one over here, number 4, looks like it is a positive linear relationship. And letter C, which data set appears to show a non-linear? So figure 1 down here is something, but it's non-linear. And you may recall that when we graphed, when we were dealing with, graphing x squared, that's what we ended up with. We ended up with a parabola. So let's go ahead and say this would be for number 1. And finally, which data set shows no relationship whatsoever? This one right here, there's just no relationship between all of these points. Okay, so that would be figure 2. And that's all you have to do there, okay? I think we have 1 or 2 more problems, you guys, but everything in this section here is pretty easy, and I don't anticipate you guys having any problems. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. Okay, last problem here, you guys. Identifying outliers and clusters and scatter plots. Let's see. Let's say we had a test in our class, and there was 100 points on there. And if most of the kids in the class got scores around 70, that would be a cluster. There'd be a cluster of kids that got scores around 70. Or maybe we had a group of kids that got 85. 6 or 7 kids got an 85. There'd also be a cluster right around the 85. Okay, so that's what a cluster is. There's a grouping of data in one particular area. Now, suppose this test was really, really hard, and the highest score in the class, we got a few kids in the class and they got 70s, but one kid got a 100 and one kid got a 2. Those scores would be called outliers because they're not anywhere near the other data points, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of things here. You guys can see that figure 1 kind of has a, let me switch to the pen mode here. Figure 1 has this positive linear relationship, but all of a sudden way out here, there's a score, a number, a figure that just doesn't belong there. So this right here would be called an outlier, okay? And everything else looks like it's grouped pretty well together. So there's really no outliers right there. And there's really no clusters right there because there's not just a bunch of points in the same area. They're all spread out pretty well. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at number 2. And problem number 2, I don't see anything over here, anything over here, here. I don't see any outliers. I just see all of the data is kind of going along this horizontal line. Okay, so I don't see any outliers and I don't see any clusters in that problem either, or example. So let's go ahead and go over to figure number 3. And figure 3, I see a group right here. So that's called a cluster, and I see a group right there, and that's also called a cluster. I'm thinking about my fish finder at this point, you guys, and if I'm up on top of the water, that's what the fish are going to look like, and there's a cluster of fish right down there. Yep, I'm going to try to get them. Okay, and there's a cluster of fish right down there as well. So figure 3 has clusters. It doesn't have any outliers though. And then the last one over here, we've got this negative linear relationship. I don't see any clusters, but I see maybe this one way over here all by itself, and this one over here, and that one's all by itself. Okay, so that's what clusters and outliers are. This problem down here, which choose the data set that has outliers. I would say figure 1 has an outlier and figure 4 has an outlier. And the next problem below that, choose the 2 data sets that have clusters. The data sets that have clusters would just be figure 3. Okay, that's it. Chapter 9-1. Nice and easy. If you're stuck, give me a shout out. All right. See you guys soon.